It's football and other F words. My name is Zach Lyons. You can follow me on Twitter at FWordsPod. And this right here next to me, sunburnt like a motherfucker like I am because I'm looking at myself in this fucking camera. We look hideous. We have had the shit kicked out of us by the sun.
Yes, we did.
This is Stoney Keeley. You can follow him on Twitter at Stoney Keeley, famously known for the Sobros Network, SobrosNetwork.com. You can follow them on Twitter. And we are brought to you by Jaspers. You know what I could have had after today of sitting out in the sun and getting the shit kicked out of me?
I can't speak for you. I can speak for me. A nice, tasty burger would have been delicious.
A nice, tasty burger. That would have been great. But you know what I really needed? 2-for-1 Sundays that you can only have at Jaspers. The best brunch, the best beer, all kinds of that classic Nashville beer. Let me say something about Mobile and down here in the South. And I think the Cajun food is pretty great. I'm a big guy on the Cajun food.
I'm with it.
But can I say something about this beer situation that we got going on down here?
Go ahead.
There's not a lot going on in this beer situation. I mean, I had an Abita Andy Gator, and it's okay. But like all of these beers are, except for the Frauberg that I had last night.
Well, that was a good one.
At a local joint. None of the beers really stand up to Nashville beer. And you know who serves a lot of Nashville beer?
Who?
Jaspers. 2-for-1, in fact, on Sundays. And you should be going to Jaspers in Nashville. And our travel and accommodations at this haunted house that we are currently staying in is sponsored by Lyons Ford. Yes, that's right. I'm Zach Lyons, and I am pimping out a family business to make sure that I got to the Senior Bowl. And that's okay. You know why? Because, fuck it. If nepotism is going to be a thing, I'm going to use it to my damn advantage, and you should use it to your advantage. And you should go down to Lyons Ford and say, hey, I listened to the boss man's son, Big Dick Lyons, Richard Lyons, and he said that I should come down here and get myself the best possible deal on a Ford truck, a Ford vehicle, a Ford car, Ford EV, a Ford Mustang. It doesn't matter. You got to use that used jalopy right there. I want the best deal on that because that's what Big Dick Lyons' son said. And this is how I like to advertise. And it's my podcast. I get to advertise. Like Big Dick Lyons, Richard Lyons said, come down here. I'm going to give you the most for your trade. And that's what Lyons Ford does. LyonsFord.net. No hassle. They wear shorts. They wear tennis shoes. No ties. Nothing. I mean, they are just like casual as fuck at Lyons Ford. LyonsFord.net. Head down there today and get you the best damn car deal of your life. You know how many other radio shows that, promote like Ford dealerships or Chevy dealerships?
Yeah.
The good thing is that on this fucking show, I get to say whatever I want, and especially because it's my dad, I know he's not probably listening.
That's right.
I get to say, you get the best damn deal, and I believe it because I used to work there. I used to work there for a long time, and I know how they do business.
We came down here in a Lyons Ford vehicle, and I can honestly say I have never felt like such in the lap of luxury before in my life. I felt like a movie star.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's because you sat in the back the whole time with your sunglasses on. And let me say this. I'm not just saying it because it is my family and all this stuff. I truly believe that if you are in the Ford family and you want a Ford truck or if you need a used car, let me say something. I have dealt and been in this business and dealt with a lot of customers. And I know that the family that is at the Ford dealership, and I call them a family because that's just how we treat everybody. And they will go down to the ends of the earth to find you the car that they want. They will exhaust every effort to get you the maximum trade value. They go through and give you the maximum value in rebates. And that's why you need to go down to Lyons Ford in Lewisburg, LyonsFord.net. You talk to Mark Wright down there. Talk to Jeremiah Justice down there. What a cool name Jeremiah Justice is. Anyway,
great name.
Even though he is an Ohio State fan. But go down there and get yourself the best deal on a car. It doesn't matter if you have bad credit, great credit. They're going to treat you the same. They do not judge a book by its cover. LyonsFord.net. Whew.
Well, Zach, I tell you what, I hope they're not wearing shorts down on a sunny Mobile day.
We are sunburnt AF, sunburnt as fuck. So let's talk about our day today. So we get up for breakfast. You get locked into 2 rooms this morning in our
3.
colonial house.
Well,
2 this morning though, right?
2 this morning, 1 last night. Yes.
I am now trained that when I hear doors jiggling and jostling, I scream from another room, do I need to come let you out? And we had to actually get a knife from the knife block and jiggle up in the door over here.
We did.
Yeah. So you've been locked in a few doors, but then we go get our breakfast.
Well, hold on. You don't know when you hear the doors jiggling in this house, Mardi Gras Manor, you don't know if it's Stoney stuck in a room somewhere or if it's the old colonial ghosts.
Well, they mainly are just here for spooning.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
They're just here for spooning. But we went to get breakfast. And who do we see other than Dougie M himself?
The big Roan boy.
The big Roan boy, Doug Marone.
Doug Marone sitting at the table next to us.
And who else do we see? Zach Strife.
The assistant offensive line coach. That's what I was going to say because I didn't know how to pronounce his last name.
I think it's Strife.
Okay.
I mean, kind of like, Strife.
It's a great offensive line name. Yeah.
We see them, and they are eyeing the fuck out of us because they think we must be someone important.
I don't know if they thought these must be important people as much as they thought, who's this weird dude with the crazy clown hair that keeps staring over here?
Yeah, and we had our meal, and then Arizona Cardinal scouts come in.
Yeah.
And then we don't know what was going on with this Indianapolis Colt, Houston Texans kind of deal. Yeah. But they came in.
There were also, I didn't comment on it because, Mobile this week is just like wherever you go, you have no idea who you're going to run into, like this as a good example of it. But like there were two dudes a couple of tables down from us that both had UTC gear on. And I meant to tell you this later, but I forgot when I accidentally ended up with the NFL scouts and coaches. Those 2 dudes were down on the field on the sideline. So they were somebody too.
Look at you. So listen, we get to the stadium. It's a nice stadium. No fucking Wi-Fi. Don't understand anything about that. I mean, like, it's 2023. Get some Wi-Fi, buds. And so me and Stoney, we get to the stands. We part ways. You wander off. And then I look across the way probably 20 minutes later, and you're sitting by yourself all alone. And I decide to come towards you to look at some other drills that were going down. I had to go through like 3 or 4 security gates.
They gave you a harder time than they gave me. I walked up and the guy looked at me and said, as long as you got that badge, you can go anywhere, which, by the way, I didn't realize you took your badge off. Now I just look like a noob here.
Well, I mean, I got promote stacking the inbox.substack.com
too, but
where there's going to be some exclusive content coming in later. And then, of course, Soberos Network here on this chest. You need to get over there and get some exclusive stuff. You had a great article about Tajay Spears.
Thank you.
And deep dive on Tajay Spears that you need to go listen to or watch or read. God, I got all 3 of those.
Read. Sensory experience, however you do it.
So I'm trying to get over there, and I hear a couple of talks. I see a couple of shirts, and I sit down next to Stoney, and I go, you're sitting where the coaches are sitting, right? Like I had to go through and lie through 3 different security guards. And so we had a good old time. Just a good old time.
Yeah. So I walked up to that part of the stadium. The reason I got over there is because I was tasked with scouting, watching the offensive line today, and where they were doing their drills, they were over in the far corner of the field. I could barely see shit. All right. My eyesight ain't that great. So I got to get over there if I'm going to do this job for a football show and football and other F words and Lions Ford, of course. If I'm going to do this shit right, I got to get to where I can see it. So I go out and I go around the way that you came, and I see it's blocked, and there's security saying, no, you can't go through. And I was like, okay, well, how do I get to that side of the stadium? And somebody tells me, like, go around the other way. There should be an opening, which in hindsight makes no sense. Like if it's open on the other end, just open the gate for me here and let me through. So they're probably just trying to get rid of me.
Let's be honest here. There should be no reason for like 3 layers of security gates.
There should not. So I go around the stadium and I walk up and I said, hey, I'm just trying to get over here to watch the offensive lineman. And the guy looks at me and says, I don't care where you go. As long as you got that badge, you're good to go. And just let me in. I walk in and I start seeing everybody in team gear. And I'm like, oh shit. I've just stumbled into where the scouts and the coaches are sitting. And sure enough, like I'm seeing, Wink Martindale just walk down the stairs right next to me. But I thought, you know what? Nobody told me no. Like, the security guard let me in. It's his fault. It ain't mine. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to sit here until somebody tells me to leave. And they never told me to leave. I did get a couple of strange looks from personnel people. I would assume personnel people, scouts or somebody looking over, kind of cutting their eyes at me like, wow, Sobro's network.
Well, I mean, I almost bumped bellies with Brian Dable. Like, we almost had a fight. Like, I was this close, and you weren't paying attention. I was close to Brian Dable, about to hit him in the face. And if you're not watching on YouTube, you should be watching YouTube. But like, we're about to like, I'm like going up the stairs. There's only 2 steps left.
Yeah.
He's on step 1. I'm on step 3, and there's 1 step between us.
Yeah.
And he eventually got over into the last row. Like, I had a power move on Brian Dable.
You sure did. Yeah. I didn't see it happening. I was looking down trying to gather my notes and my notepad and everything. I actually just about ran into you, and I almost drove you into Brian Dable, which would have been a story. What if, like, NFL headlines
fucking injured Brian Dable.
Brian Dable injured at the Senior Bowl.
Oh my God,
man. I would have just run. Sorry.
Yeah.
You're on
well,
your own
that would
at
have been
point.
fine. I would taken all the glory for myself.
Fair
I would have
enough.
spun it away. I spun it in a way that would have been Brian Dable's fault. If you've ever listened to the show, you know that I could do it. So we get sunburnt. We go to Publix. We get our aloe vera lotion and everything. So we go to the sports bar, and the sports bar that we went to was Walk-Ons.
It's everywhere.
Where we decided to do our Senior Bowl review. What you didn't see is that we're in the parking lot with the tailgate up, just a couple of guys in shorts, just lathering ourselves up with lotion in the middle of a parking lot in a busy street, and we're just the lotion boys.
The Lotion Boys. That's a good nickname for us. Yeah, I'm sure that there were some people in the building. They treated us pretty nicely in there. Who's to say they didn't see us in the parking lot and we're like, listen, we play this right. We might get some of this sex,
Well, I mean, you never know. You never know what happens. So let's get into some of the NFL news that we saw on our way in, okay? So we're sitting there, of course, Todd Downing is actually serving his sentence. Not a big deal. Not our concern anymore because Todd Downing's not here, but worth mentioning at least.
Sure.
We also see that Sean Payton has been traded to Denver Broncos. Again, not really our concern, I feel like, because, I mean, it's not really going to affect the Tennessee Titans at all, in my opinion.
Also wonder, I mean, are we just going to assume that's going to be a great fit, that he's just going to walk in and day one flip thing? Are we sure Sean Payton is still his last couple of years?
Well, and it's also Russell Wilson. Like, I mean, they can be best friends all they want, but I mean, it's kind of a little messed up.
I have my doubts. That's all I'm saying.
So we're going to head to and switch to D'Amico Ryans gets a 6-year contract with the Houston Texans.
Man,
we are both Alabama fans, so we obviously appreciate what D'Amico Ryans has done at a college level, at a pro level, and as a coach. Probably a little bit more than most people that follow the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
I think this is a great hire, but here's where I want to leave it with you in a question. Is what year do you think that's actually going to start being a threat? Because for me, I am looking at this as a Titans fan saying, well, they may get Bryce Young, right?
Yeah.
But there's also a good chance it's a defensive head coach. We don't know who the offensive coordinator is. We don't know what Nick Caserio is going to do, if he's going to still stick around, by the way. What if they go Will Levis? What if they go CJ Stroud? So we can't worry about the quarterback. I think a year 3, year 4, they're a threat for maybe sneaking in, kind of like a Miami Dolphins, New England Patriots threat to the Buffalo Bills.
I think that's reasonable. I think there are some pieces in place in Houston that are intriguing, specifically on offense. When you talk about a guy like Dameon Pierce, who runs like a wrecking ball, I think Nico Collins is probably, he's not your wide receiver 1, but I think he's a solid wide receiver 2. The offensive line has some pieces. There's some pieces on defense. Jalen Petrie, Derek Stingley Jr. They have something there to build around. For me, the question is, do they get the quarterback position right? And that's not to say I'm sitting here right now and telling you, well, if they pick Bryce Young instead of Will Levis, they're going to be okay. It's if whoever they pick develops into a good quarterback, then on down the road, yeah, I could see them developing into a threat. I don't think the Texans, and from me spamming your comments on your shows for the past year, I don't think the Texans are as far away as many people think. I think getting a coach like this that schemes the defense the way that he does, somebody that is going to adjust to the modern NFL and not just, stubbornly stick with what they know like Lovie Smith did. I think this is going to have a massive influence on the Texans. I would say, man, gun to my head, I think I 2 to 3 seasons.
Yeah, I think I would go 3 to 4, and here's why: is that I think the quarterback situation is a mess, but also the wide receiver situation is not very good. The offensive line situation is not very good, and I think the defense is close. If Lovie Smith can get out of the defense what he got out of it, D'Amico Ryan should. We've seen a lot of coordinators come in as head coaches and not be able to be also a defensive coordinator. Maybe we don't know what kind of head coach he's going to be, right?
Yeah.
His defense should be really good. I've already seen that they are considering Bobby Slowick to come in as offensive coordinator, which is a very big Titans. I was really high on him to come to the Titans. So that obviously means that, and this is what I was afraid of with D'Amico Ryan's getting a head coaching job, is that pretty much that a lot of candidates that I had for the Titans are probably going to want to go to D'Amico Ryan's. And there's just a natural connection, a natural relationship, right? And I look at it and I go, okay, that's going to be a little tough. If Bobby Sloat goes over there with D'Amico Ryan's, I don't know whose defensive coordinator is going to be. But if these guys go over here, it may be a little bit quicker. I just am not sure about this offense, how quick the turnaround could be.
I think one thing to consider with Ryans too is that I think he does have a little bit of that leader of men characteristic that we see in guys like Mike Vrabel and like Mike Tomlin. Everybody's talking about his defensive schemes, but I think he's a guy that players want to play for. And maybe it is that cliche of, well, he's a former player, so he's been in their shoes before and it's easier to relate to him. But I think there is a component of his character that draws people in that I think should give this locker room a spark, I would think.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think the Jaguars and the Colts should be more scared of the Texans than the Titans should be right now. And maybe that's a little bit of homerism, but we've talked about this. I'm just not ready to believe in the Jaguars. And the Colts still don't have a head coach. So I want to switch to this whole Chris Harris thing that is going on, because we kind of sat around at the stadium. We've kind of, are mingling among some media members and stuff like that, and nationwide media members, local media members, and we kind of heard before Chris Harris hit the news today in many different ways. We kind of heard that he's here, he's kind of with the Titans, but kind of not.
We don't
when
really
it comes
know.
Down.
It's
And so then immediately, it was just apropos that, okay, well, now you see that Chris Harris is going to interview for the San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator job. But listen, let's be honest. He's going up against Vic Fangio. He's going up against, who was the other guy that he was going up against?
I don't remember.
Oh, crap. This is horrible news. He's going up against someone else that's a much more qualified candidate as well. I can't remember who it was off the top of my head. But he's got a long road to go over there. But the Chicago Bears have reached out to him.
Yeah.
And they have reached out to him in the same capacity, the same title that he's done a under-the-table kind of agreement with for the Titans. Now, keep in mind, it has not been reported nor confirmed by the Tennessee Titans that he was officially hired. It's kind of like a talk soon.
Talk soon?
Yeah, maybe a see you later, or hey, I'll reach out to you.
See what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? Like that text message you get, and it's you don't contact them for 3 days later or something like that.
Yeah.
That's what it kind of feels like to me, and that's what it's always felt like to me. It's until it's official, it's not official.
It's like online dating.
Yeah, so would he go to the Bears? I don't know. But this whole Chris Harris thing, it's something.
It is something, because you would think it definitely impacts how the Titans are looking at the defensive backs this week down here in Mobile.
Yep. You would think that because Chris Harris likes the big long guys.
Yeah, and there's some big long guys here.
Long guys here.
Yeah.
And I look at it and I think, if are they just waiting around for Chris Harris? Because what if he says no, I'm not coming and I'm going to the Chicago Bears?
Well,
then what are they going to do for a defensive backs coach? This is something where, like, to me, this is where the negotiation skills come through.
Yeah.
Here's your contract, sign this contract, and there's an addendum that if by this date you get a defensive coordinator position, then you can take it. Because then you're protected from someone like the Chicago Bears creeping in with Ian Cunningham as a rising GM. They have a really great head coach in Matt Eberflus. They got some really good defensive pieces that probably already fit what he's looking for, whereas the Tennessee Titans just have a bunch of little people running around.
Well, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
It just feels like they could have went about this a little bit better and got a little bit more security.
What I'm so curious about, because these things, there are contracts for these things. This is the NFL, right? This is ink and paper, right? And how does this get reported that they're highly interested in Chris Harris, and it's to the point where it's basically a done deal? Nobody's going to say it's a done deal, but all indications are that it's a done deal. And then all of this starts happening. It just kind of makes me think that maybe this is Chris Harris's camp. That's just kind of like, we're going to keep our options open.
Yeah. Well, that would make sense. I mean, especially if you don't have a contract signed or you're not forced to sign a contract. I mean, that would have been the way to go like a week ago.
Yeah, yeah.
We do have a question from Matt Bell. Was Tim Kelly there? And we were told it was a little hard to see. My telephoto lens actually is not compatible with this camera. It's compatible with an older Canon DSLR.
Mm-hmm.
However, we were told by numerous people that he was not there currently, and that he's a little weird.
Yeah, that's what we heard. I was kind of surprised. To hear that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. He looks like a weird dude.
You think so? I actually think he looks. Maybe I'm a weird dude.
I don't know. I mean, he kind of looks like the Undertaker, right?
Weird dudes, because weird dudes, hang out with weird dudes.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm reading him accurately for me as a weird dude.
But as of right now, from what we can report, unless he came down today or something later today or this evening or comes down tomorrow, he was not here currently. So that's pretty big news. Well, not big news, but I think that's news to look at with a discerning eye.
It's interesting, and we talked about it yesterday, because I think there's an element of reading the tea leaves here where you can kind of figure out where he stands a little bit with his coaching staff.
Well, and let's talk about this. Speaking of coaching staffs, Charles London, I think, did a great job today. Even though that his in the American team drills at the very end, they kind of do what pro teams do, a little competition where either offense or defense has push-ups on the line. His offensive side lost, and I think it was on an errant throw by quarterback, which we'll get to later.
Yeah,
but I went down the field. I was down there. And I was looking for, both of us were looking for Tajay Spears to try to talk to.
Yeah.
And I walked past Charles London. A pretty cool 5'8". Like, he is not that tall.
That was surprising to me. I didn't see him. I wasn't really focused. Again, I was looking for players to talk to. And when you told me that, I was like, man, I might have walked right by him and just had no idea.
Yeah. And that just means that you don't look down on us little people.
I don't look down on you little people. Exactly.
You're a height elitist.
I am.
Okay, let's talk about some of the players. And here's what we're going to do. Okay? If you're listening, if you're watching, this is the plan. We are going to talk about a certain, basically one offensive tackle.
Yeah.
One offensive lineman or offensive guard, one center. This is what Stoney's been in charge of. And we're going to talk about what round we think they're going to be projected in, and how they fit with the Tennessee Titans. And I'm going to do the same with one wide receiver, one tight end, and one running back. But on the flip side, we're going to talk about guys that also, in each of those positions needs to get their shit together
Yeah.
because they had a rough day today. And
Mhm.
listen, this is not to say that they are bad players or they're players that will never make it to the NFL, but they are players that from day 1 to day 3, which is Thursday, when we circle back around and talk about these prospects, we need to see some drastic improvement from.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to start with you, Stoney.
Okay.
Give me one position, one player that you think is going to help the Tennessee Titans, and where do you think he'll be drafted at?
Well, I'll start with the left tackle, Tyler Steen out of Alabama. This is a guy that is getting some fringe first round consideration. It was kind of like he started as a top tackle prospect in this draft. People kind of cooled off on him. I was one of those guys after watching every Alabama game this season, but now it's looking like he might get back into the first round. 11 would be way too high to take Tyler Steen. This is a pick that, like, if you're in the back end of the 20s, we're talking about here. If he's there in the second round, I think he has traits where he could be a franchise left tackle in the NFL. I was surprised by how big he was. Seeing him in person was kind of striking, but also like just a pretty good first step, pretty good initial burst. He looked good in pass protection. He looked good in run blocking. He uses his hands effectively, keeps his feet moving to really drive defenders back. He sprang a couple of running backs open by opening up a hole that way. He had a good rep against Byron Young today. He really impressed me with his combination of size, polish, and athleticism. So I don't think he's going to be there for the Titans in the second round, but if they end up getting him in the second round as a potential target, I think you've got a guy that can come in right away and compete for a starting spot at left tackle.
So you think that he's going to be able to currently, like if today was the last day of the Senior Bowl, okay?
Yeah.
You think that he has helped his stock enough to move up into second or third round conversation to maybe late first round conversation?
I think he's gotten back there, and part of it is for stuff like he's showing in the workouts, in the one-on-one drills at the Senior Bowl. I also think part of it is that this just kind of feels like a shaky offensive tackle class at the top, and we're seeing a lot of volatility as people slide Skoronski and Paris Johnson and Broderick Jones from Georgia, sliding these people all around. Jalen Duncan is in this conversation as well, another guy we watched today. So I think there's a lot of volatility there. So it kind of depends on what people are looking for. But I feel like because of the options available, yeah, I think that's part of the equation for him sneaking back into first round consideration.
Well, and I guess when you talk about a guy like Blake Freeland, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Blake Freeland is a guy that's kind of been borderline first. The same with Jalen Duncan. Borderline first. We just went black. Okay, we're good.
We're good.
Okay. I saw the camera go black. I don't know why it went black.
Yeah.
But anyway, we saw a guy like Blake Freeland today who's a borderline first.
Yeah.
And we thought that he looked pretty inconsistent, right?
Yeah, and it's a very specific issue with Blake Freeland too. Finish your thought. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Well, no. I was just going to say, when you talk about guys that are borderline first, and then you talk about a guy like Tyler Steen, who's a borderline second, something like the Senior Bowl where he can showcase his talents and he can showcase all this stuff is a good way for someone like that to move up and another guy like Blake Freeland to move down.
Yeah, and Blake Freeland's a really interesting prospect, and we saw I watched a lot of him today. I did my best to get pictures and videos up, but I was really focused and taking notes and watching every rep that I could. And I was alarmed when I caught up with you, and you said something like, your boy Freeland's looking good out there. And I was like, I don't think he's my boy anymore. I was shocked to learn that Twitter was like blowing up over him. And you see
and I think it's the run. I think it's like, here's what I think. I think these Twitter guys and some of these scouts only peek up out of their phones for like one or two plays. And
that's
the one or two plays,
yeah,
I think the one or two plays that I looked at are probably what they're running with.
Yeah, for sure. And he is a mauler, and I think he does play with pretty good technique. I think he's a pretty quick athlete for a man of his stature. He's a big fucking dude. He's a hoss. So I think, you see those things, but if you watch every snap, you see the pad level issues come home to roost a little bit with him, where guys just sink their hips and get below his pad level and they're right around him. And the next thing you know, they're running freely to the quarterback. It happened a couple of times with a couple of prospects that I didn't jot down, admittedly. I'm just focusing on him, but throwing a punch at his shoulder, just throwing it up there when you initiate contact, just like that. He's so top heavy and he plays at such a high level that it throws him off balance and they just get right by. It only happened a few times.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I still think this is he's going to get drafted pretty high. And I think he, as a run blocker, I mean, he's a guy that you see the skill set in, but until he can iron that out, I just don't know that he's a franchise left tackle in the NFL, because I think he's going to struggle with savvy edge rushers that notice this about him. And if they know they can get away with it, they're just going to do it over and over and over, or the speedy guys that just get around him and get below him and squirt right through him.
I've also noticed, and you talk about the pad level, it's just specifically when he's down at the line, you can actually see
he's like a foot above everybody
he's
else.
a foot above everybody else. Like if there was a level
Yeah.
and there was a laser, it would go that way. It's kind of crazy. I want to talk about I think I want to talk about a Purdue tight end.
Oh, okay.
And I
haven't watched this guy. I'm stoked to see.
I know that is not a sexy thing, and I have to pull this out because I want to say Dylan Parham.
That's a
because
guard.
That's
for the
a
Raiders.
guard. So I had to pull this out because I didn't. Durham Payne. Payne Durham.
Yeah.
So that's throwing me for a little bit of a loop. When I was watching the drills for the national team, which was the first team that we saw, the tight end drills came right in front of me. They were right there, and they were doing basically almost like a 3-cone version of like you run, you turn, you backpedal, you catch the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it was him. It was Wiley from Cincinnati, and then it was Davis from Clemson. So there's only 3 tight ends, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the way that essentially the way that they always put the Purdue tight end first, had him teach the drill and run through the drill first.
Yeah.
And then as the drill progressed, he was the only one that kept getting faster and faster. The other guys didn't.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then I go and watch them blocking with a left guard or a left tackle or whatever. They kind of do this thing where the national team lined up with a tight end and an offensive lineman, and they would call hut, and they would block 2 defenders. Again, maximum effort, going through, giving it his all. And I will say this, he's not the flashiest pass catcher or anything.
Yeah.
But for the Tennessee Titans, if you're looking for a guy that may be in there that you're looking to complement Chigokonkwo,
exactly,
this would be the guy that would be on my radar. And this would be a guy that is probably, I would say, like a 6th or 7th round pick. I mean, because he can't pass catch, it's not that he can't, it's just he's not very flashy. Yeah. Especially when you talk about a Wiley, or you talk about a Musgrave, which I'll talk about later. When you talk about some of these other tight ends and the high tight ends like Darnell Washington and guys like that, to me, it's like, this could be a steal. This could be the guy that could be the next Jeff Swain, but actually a tight end.
6'5", 258 pounds.
Yeah, and he looks tall. He does not look 258.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, you were raving about him a little bit today.
Yeah,
so that's a guy, and something we've talked about this week is watching guys where they start compared to where they finish, and this is a great example of how you can really see that in real time, and that is a quantifiable measure of coachability. That he's out there on day one of practice, getting better and faster at the drills that they're running.
Yeah, because he only had 22 catches, and now listen, a couple of people list him as a third down, third round tight end, and this was a guy that caught, when I say 22 passes in high school. He went for 56, 560, and 8 touchdowns last year, had 10 yards per reception. So he can catch. I just don't think that is what showed up to me today. What caught my eye was how, because Rand Carthon, before he left this morning, RC was on Ramon, Kayla, and
Sure.
Will. And he talked about, I like players. Sorry, there's a little John Robinson of me.
We're getting our impressions blurred together.
Yeah, but I like people that love football.
Yeah.
And this looked like a guy that didn't say that he loved football, but showed it.
Yeah.
And I think that matters when you're at the Senior Bowl. How you run the drills, how you respond, and like when someone catches a ball or run or has a handoff, and do they finish? Right? Like a lot of these players I see that I really like are finishing the play even though the play's over.
Yeah.
And you hear coaches say, finish, finish, finish. And there's a reason for that. They want to see if you love football.
You got me stoked for Payton Durham. Now
I know, that's crazy.
I just wrote his name down. Like I want to go. Let's go find some of this guy's film and see like game action how he's doing too. Yeah.
Give me an offensive guard.
Oh, dude, it's so easy for me. It's Jarrett Patterson.
Ooh, you see how quick look at him. He's all aflutter.
He was one of my guys going into this week.
It was,
and the big question for him was, is his technique and polish going to translate against more elite dynamic athletes? And I'm telling you, first practice, it did. I mean, he looks like he's great no matter what situation you put him in. He was out there gliding like a gazelle. I mean, just good lateral movement, good hand usage. He played with leverage. I think it was interesting. They were running a drill where they were taking the guards and pulling them and trying to teach them like how to pull, which, you don't really think. You would think like at this level of football, guards would know how to do that. But, I guess you're trying to measure everything you possibly can to see how scheme versatile these guys are. And I think, he was out there running with his pads a little high on those instances. I think, you could really remove somebody from a play if you just lower that shoulder and use that leverage to just completely take him out. But he was receptive to coaching. An example like you were talking about with Payton Durham. He runs the drill. He runs it a little high. The coach pulls him to the side. I hear him, talking to him. They run it again. He gets lower and he looks so much better. So for me, so far so good with Jarrett Patterson. I think he's going to be a starting caliber left guard in the NFL for a long time. And to me, I think that is just as important as left tackle this offseason. I think they've got to completely rebuild the left side of that line. So for me, I'm looking at it like if they can get their hands on Jarrett Patterson, they've got their guard. You can check that off the list. I'm that confident in this prospect between watching him and then seeing how his game has translated into these one-on-one drills, at least today. And an important note, like we should frame this conversation within the context of this is just one day's worth of practice. So you don't want to watch it and then all of a sudden say, oh, he's a lock. Hall of Fame, get his jacket ready, that sort of thing. But I like Patterson. I think he's another guy that's probably throughout the process. I think he's gonna be a first round pick. You don't pick a guard at 11. You don't pick a guard at 11, but another guy like Steen that I think the back end of the 20s, you're going to see somebody take him. So this was the scenario that we were talking about as we were clinking beers at the bar. This would be a situation where if somebody were to love a prospect so much to trade up with the Titans, if they could slide back in the first round and still get a guy like Jarrett Patterson, I think that's an ideal situation. Maybe he's there when they pick in the second, but I think he's going to end up being a first rounder. And I think the only way that the Titans are going to get their hands on him, if they overreach at 11, or if they trade down and get down into the 20s to pick up more picks and still get a guy like this. But I like him a lot, man.
That's awesome. I mean, it's so cool to find guys in here that you're like, okay, these guys are on my radar. And one of those guys for me is the guy that you put on my radar last night, which is Puka
Nacua.
Puka
Nacua. Nobody was talking about him.
Nobody. Yeah. Nobody but the guy that we talked to from Brigham Young with the bad facial hair. And
hey, my man's trying.
He was trying. And Stoney Keeley with the good facial hair has been talking about Puka Nacua. And I have to say that I came away thoroughly impressed. This is a guy that, and I talked about it in our little review show, he had a real hard time staying up and not sliding down. Now, listen, it was very wet out there, and we saw other cornerbacks, we saw other wide receivers have the same issue.
Also, I almost slipped when we got on the field at the end, at the end of the day.
But let me say this. It didn't matter if he slipped. He contorted and moved his body in a way that he caught the ball.
He has some catches like that on his resume where you're just like, I have no idea how he has the concentration to haul that in.
He was in the national team of wide receivers, and the national team of wide receivers is basically the scrubs, because all the guys that you're really looking for at the American team, you're talking about your Rashee Rice, your Xavier Hutchinson, your Jonathan Mingo, those kinds of guys.
Yeah,
I mean, he's lumped in with Trey Palmer and Ronnie Bell as the two like known guys, and he was better than both. Trey Palmer, we talked about it last night on a football show when we got here. To me, Trey Palmer is such a forgettable wide receiver.
Yeah.
Ronnie Bell, I don't know how he was the fourth fastest.
That's what they said.
Player on the national team. He clocked in at like 19 miles per hour. It may be just long speed because his short area quickness was atrocious.
Yeah.
I have to say that I walked away thoroughly impressed with Puka Nacua. And I also, to bring up one other wide receiver that I am anxious to go watch more film on.
Yeah.
And this to me is someone that needs to be on the Titans' radar because his route running was off the charts, and that is Dontavian Wicks.
Yes, I'm glad you said that. He's one.
And
of
I have a video up on
the
Effort Spot. He was the belle of the ball.
Yeah.
In one play for the Senior Bowl. And listen, Rashee Rice looked good. Xavier Hutchinson had some moves, but there was no audible ooh from the Senior Bowl up until like 3:30 p.m. I mean, all day it was kind of quiet. There wasn't those big like oohs and ahs from the crowd. That was one, and he put on a show. And I heard a few people put him on my radar, and I just hadn't had the time to watch film. That's a guy, Dontavian Wicks from Virginia, a wide receiver that I'm going to go watch some film on. Hopefully, maybe tonight if I got time.
Do you know the draft projections for Dontavian Hicks?
I do
Hicks
not.
Or Nicks?
Wicks.
Wicks. Neither Wicks. Yeah.
Let's see.
So I know Puka Nacua for a lot of people had an undrafted grade. So I called him a hidden gem. I don't know, after seeing him practice today, if he keeps this up on this trajectory and then he gets, through the pro days and the combine circuit and all that at this rate, like he's not going to be undrafted. The way I compared him to, if you were paying attention to the Senior Bowl last year, was Khalil Shakir, a guy that just kind of got to the Senior Bowl that nobody was really talking about. And then he gets there, and the next thing you know, you're just like, who is this kid running all this crazy shit and just breaking these defensive backs' ankles? And it's Khalil Shakir, and now he's doing things for the Buffalo Bills.
Puka is up to a 5th round projected.
Good for him.
In NFL mock draftables, he's a 5th round. He's the 140th overall player. So let's look at Wicks.
Nacua, he's a tough, scrappy guy, man. The way I described him is that he wants to drag you down into the mud.
4th round for Dontavian Wicks. So around
okay,
this will both change for both those players if their Senior Bowl continues to trend. Andre Yoshivas looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Rashee Rice looked good. Xavier Hutchinson looked good on the wide receiver belt. I already talked about Trey Palmer. I also talked about Ronnie Bell. And I want to say something about Nathaniel Dale. And here's where I'm at with him.
Okay.
He was kind of, a lot of people said, I've had a few people in my mention say that he was like, oh, I heard he killed it at the Senior Bowl. If he did, I missed it.
Yeah, me too.
And I will say this, the kick returns and the punt returns, he dropped 3 of them.
Yeah.
And I think the Nathaniel Tankdale hype train that is being carried over from his pre-Senior Bowl hype to this, again, this does not mean anything because let's see what he looks like on day 3. And he's on my, because we're looking at defenders on day 2.
Mm-hmm.
So day 3, I'm going to be looking for some Nathaniel Dell.
Yeah, and as far as framing the conversation in this manner, we're just saying, like, as far as day 1, you just put it in a bubble. Day 1 itself, stock down on Tank Dell a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with that. Okay, so offensive centers.
Yeah. So
Who you
this,
got?
yeah, your dude, man. I had not watched any John Michael Schmitz, the center out of Minnesota, and you mentioned him in Stacking the Inbox
Yeah.
at stackingtheinbox.substack.com.
Oh, look at you! You do it better than I do.
So my ears perked up a little
Yeah.
bit, and I thought, oh, this is a guy that I want to watch today and just kind of see what his strengths are. He is 6'3", 306 pounds. Man, lightning fast first step. I mean, just such a quick, effortless lateral mover, uses his leverage, has a nice little a low center of gravity that he uses to create leverage on the defensive linemen. The only thing I saw, and I told you about this then, like he tends to do this thing where he's impossible to drive back on most plays, but if somebody gets him out of position and he starts moving backwards, he starts like hopping a little bit. He leaves his feet, and when he does, he gets pushed back. So another guy that I keep bringing up, these guys like first, second round guy, depending on how bad a team needs a center and whether or not they're willing to invest a first round pick in him. So they're not going to get all three of these guys that I've
Right.
listed here. It's kind of a pipe dream. But if that's the choice, similar discussion to Jarrett Patterson, if they find themselves somehow picking in the 20s, this would be a good way to go. But I will say there is a kid out of Troy, Jake Andrews, tiny, 6'2", 319. If I put on 40 pounds, I'm Jake Andrews, built like a bowling ball though. I kept writing his name down today because it doesn't seem like anybody's giving him a chance. He's another guy that has an undrafted grade, but I'm telling you, this is a competitive football player. He's scrappy. The way I phrased it was, if he's going down, you're going down with him. And because of his because of his size, he does have that low center of gravity, and he does use his leverage well. He gets to people, he clinches, he hangs on in those one-on-one battles. You pointed it out. I saw it too. There were obvious issues with his size where he did just get blown up on a couple of plays. But I think within the context of this being an undrafted free agent, I think this is a competitive football player that you probably want in your locker room. You probably want on your football team because he's going to push everyone around him. I was really surprised and impressed by the spark that Jake Andrews showed on the football field today. And I don't see a whole lot of people talking about him, but he deserves his flowers for the performances he had today.
Well, let me tell you something. Talking about spark, Evan Hull,
yes,
Northwestern running back. Holy crap. When the national team went into the drills where they basically pitch your tight ends and your running backs in various pass catching drills against linebackers, this guy was going insane. He has an insane jump cut as well. He's like our boy Tyjae Spears. He's a little bit smaller and everything like that. But I saw him returning kicks, and he was doing really well at that as well. And I look at him and I go, okay, this guy's a little smaller.
Yeah.
But holy crap, maybe he just convert to a wide receiver? Because the routes that he was running and the separation he was getting on the linebackers he was paired up on, it was embarrassing for them. I was like thoroughly embarrassed because the national team, I wrote down the national team, it was number 10, Cam Jones, Indiana linebacker, was just thoroughly. He should hang up his cleats. Like it was that bad.
Yeah.
And he's just a little fellow. I mean, I'm Evan Hull.
I'm looking at his stats here. He's 5'10", 214 pounds. I'll tell you, like one of the notes that I made is that I really like this kid's build. I mean, he doesn't play small.
No,
if that makes sense.
He embarrassed this this guy I was talking about, which is number 10 again. Cam Jones, 6'1", 227, embarrassed him. I mean, like juked him out of. He ended up on the ground just by a simple juke. I mean, to me, these are the guys that we got to be looking at, and I got to go to this guy that I think needs a big rebound. He needs a big Senior Bowl closeout.
Okay,
Luke Musgrave.
Ooh, the hype train leaving the station on Luke Musgrave this morning.
Eric Edholm, wrote this thing for NFL.com, put Luke Musgrave on our radar. Braden Gall of my co-host on the football show, 440 Sports. He also wanted some Luke Musgrave, some hey, send me some Luke
I
Musgrave
was about to
stuff.
say, he told us to get some
I
content.
need some content on Luke Musgrave.
Yeah.
Oh, that Luke Musgrave. Had several concentration drops. He was bodied by several linebackers that were smaller than him, and one of them bodied him for an interception. Now, listen, the wide receiver or the quarterbacks today, not that great.
No.
And specifically in Luke Musgraves' group. However, they were all catchable balls that he dropped, and he only had like 1 or 2 catches on the whole day.
Yeah, that's not good.
It was not good. It was disappointing to say the least, because I mean, you're talking about a massive mountain of a man, a tight end that's supposed to run a 4.4, and if you run a 4.4 and you're that big as a tight end, you better catch the damn ball.
Yeah,
and he didn't today. So when I circle back around on Thursday for those final practices, I'm going to be looking at Luke Musgrave and thinking, what have you done? Have you gotten over the hump, or do you have a bad case of the yips, and this is going to be an issue for you going forward?
Yeah, I think it's a fair question.
Was there an offensive tackle? We talked about DeJuan Jones. How disappointed were you in DeJuan Jones?
I don't know if disappointed is the right word for it, because I think he had his fair share of questions coming into the Senior Bowl, but he's just a mountain of a man. I mean, he was absolutely the biggest player that I saw on the field today. I mean, he just towers over everybody else that he's next to. And you see these reps where they do, the power run blocking kind of stuff, and he just dominates people. He had a great rep against Andre Carter II where, I mean, it just looked like, a little kid that's getting in trouble, and you just pick him up to carry him to his room kind of deal, kicking and screaming kind of deal. He just made short work of the guy. And you see that stuff, but then I'm wondering if the heat and humidity was an issue for him today, because there are times that he looked a little stiff and a little slow off the first step and not really showing a burst. And he kept taking his helmet off for some reason. He looked a little gassed.
And you guys may not think that taking the helmet off is a big deal, but let me say this. There are very few players that took their helmet off.
I didn't see anybody
at all.
Yeah.
Much less the multiple times that I even saw DeJuan Jones after Stoney pointed it out.
When he wasn't running a drill today, his helmet was off. So I don't know what the deal is with that, but he's a guy that I think has to show that he can be quick enough to pass protect in the NFL, because people looked at his size and they start saying, "Oh, fringe first rounder." I even had one of our listeners that asked me, like, him or Paris Johnson, and I'm like, Paris Johnson by 100 miles. Like, it's not even a discussion. That's how far away DeJuan Jones looked with the talent here in Mobile. So, yeah, it's kind of disappointing based off of the hype around him, but you still see a good right tackle in there, especially for power running teams. But he's got to show that he can get better and get a little bit quicker. And I'm curious about the helmet thing. That's all. Yeah. That's the only reason I bring that up.
Well, tomorrow we're going to be looking at defenders, and one of the defenders, that I am interested in looking at is someone that caught my eye today, and that is the linebacker out of Washington State.
Yeah, he's on my list too.
That I called you. I specifically said, hey, this guy, Dayon Henley.
Yeah.
Could be Dayan. I have not watched any film on him. I'm like, we need to watch film on him, because he may be a tweener, but he was out there in the running back drills against the national team in coverage.
Yeah.
He was fighting. He was knocking balls out of hands. I mean, he was doing some great stuff. I also want to kind of focus in on Lonnie Phelps tomorrow too. Like,
I was about to say,
that's a guy that's a fringe 6th or 7th round edge rusher that that has some good quality, some good athleticism that I kind of want to talk about. And then of course Will McDonald, and there were a couple other players you wanted to see tomorrow.
Well, talking about DeJuan Jones a second ago, Lonnie Phelps made a really good play against DeJuan Jones in practice earlier today, where he just kind of got one step on Jones, and Jones was trying to push him away from the play, but he just couldn't run him down, and he just kind of seesawed around, like just the bend right around him was pretty nice. I am still excited about Andre Carter II, because he showed those flashes today where you see the athletic freak, you see the electric factory that he can be. And then you saw the moments where DeJuan Jones like just tossed him out the club kind of deal. So I think he's another guy that is working to get into the first round. And if he shows that he can get stronger throughout the course of the week and kind of take to the coaching that he's receiving, I think he's going to improve his draft stock quite a bit. He was a lot of fun to watch today.
Well, that will do it for us. We do have a question here, 2 questions. Do y'all think the NFL is rigged and scripted? No.
No, I don't.
We're both wrestling fans, so we'd pretty much know if that was the case. And the other questions from Kenneth Crawl: how did the detective work on the staff go, Zach? Not as great. Earlier in the episode, I did say that my telephoto lens I thought would work on my Canon DSLR camera is actually just for an older model. There is apparently a difference between a Mark II and a Rebel.
Okay.
So I didn't get to go and see some close-up shots like I wanted to, but we did find out that Tim Kelly was not there today at practice. We don't know much more than that. And we do know that Chris Harris was there.
Before we get out of here,
Yeah.
Zach, I'm sorry to hijack your outro here, but I want to give this kid some respect because he was everywhere today. Georgia Tech defensive lineman Keon White, 6'4", 280 pounds. He was relentless. He's one of those high motor, high effort guys, power, drive, that sort of edge rusher. And I didn't know a lot about him going into today, but he was all over the field making plays, and he's another guy that I'm excited to watch this week.
Okay, so let's tell the people before we leave and we sign off what to expect if you're watching right now. Because if you're listening to this podcast, this will already be at SoBersNetwork.com.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to be writing about for tomorrow?
I am going to be writing about Tyler Steen. I am
Okay.
going to admit that I was wrong about Tyler Steen to have gotten so cold on him. And I want to write about Cody Malk a little bit too, because he was impressive as well.
That's interesting. So I think I'm just going to give my overall thoughts. I think one of the guys I'm going to talk about is Tyson Bagent.
Yes.
The quarterback from Shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also going to just kind of give you an overall thought. Here's some guys that I saw, and here's kind of what I saw that I didn't like, that I did like, and what I'm going to be looking forward to next time.
Yeah.
That will be at stackingtheinbox.substack.com. We're going to go through some of the pictures and videos that did not release on Twitter, and we're going to see which ones we're going to put on Stack in the Inbox for exclusive subscribers and also over for those that go to SoBersNetwork.com. We're going to be looking at all kinds of stuff. Tomorrow is day 2 of the Senior Bowl. Defensive, or I shouldn't say tomorrow for the audio people. Wednesday is the defensive day for me and Stoney.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to it. Of course, we'll, in our little watching the drills and one-on-ones, you can't help but watch some offensive players. So we may see, hey,
sneaks in there.
Someone may improved or may have declined. Make sure that you stay connected. Turn on notifications for at Stoney Keeley, for at F-Words Pod, for at 440 Sports, for at Sobers Network, for myself at F-Words Pod. Like I think I already said, we are down here at the Mardi Gras Manor in Part 2, Lions Ford.
That's right.
And Lions Ford is, of course, a dealership close to my heart. Go down there, get you a new Ford vehicle, get you a new pre-owned vehicle.
Yes.
And get you the best deal that you could possibly get, and go to somewhere that you know that, hey, I know that Zach's on Twitter. I know that Zach's on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
If I get a shit deal, I can actually tell everybody and call Zach out.
That's a good point.
I put my reputation on the line. That they are going to do everything within their power to make sure that you get a good deal. Lions Ford in Lewisburg, lionsford.net, and, of course, Jasper's in Nashville. The next evolution of Sports Bar, it's Predator season. The hockey season is still going. They are a Predator Hockey Sports Bar. Get over there. 2-for-1 beers on Sunday. I need that craft beer from Nashville in my life so bad. I miss it already. We've only been here for less than 24 hours, and I miss it already.
I'm with you.
Jasper's in Nashville. This has been Football and Other F Words. And guess what? You have just been